What is up, guys? Wrestling Premiere is here. Alright, another rise of video. Why did I decide on The Miz? Well, it's simple. This guy had such an amazing story, and he's perhaps one of the more recognizable WWE stars of today. He showed that passion and hard work will get you so damn far, and it doesn't matter whether or not you come from the real world. If you have the drive and dedication, you'll succeed. In this video, I cover the rise of The Miz, from the real world to Tough Enough to backstage hazing to WWE champion. Anyways, for me to cover The Miz's rise to the top, let me just give you a refresher as to who he was before WWE. The Miz, Mike Mizanin. I believe he's been a fan of the WWE ever since he was a kid. Also, I think his favorite wrestler was The Rock. As a teenager, Mizanin was poised to become a professional wrestler, but before he did though, he sent in a tape to audition for the real world. In an interview with Bleacher Report, I believe, Miz spoke about how he auditioned for the real world. And I quote, "I remember sitting on my couch on a Saturday watching reruns of the real world, and it said, 'Do you want to be on the real world? Go to MTV.com and you could try out there.' And I said, 'I want to be on the real world,' and I sent in my tape. I'm 20 years old, I moved to New York City, the biggest melting pot in the world," Mizanin explained. "You go in there, you have these cameras on you, you have roommates you've never met before, people from all different walks of life." Anyways, he had dropped out of Miami University once he was chosen to be on the 10th season of the show. On the real world, Mike Mizanin developed an alter ego character called The Miz. The Miz was totally different from his actual self, and it was basically a wrestling character. Like, watching a clip of The Miz, I'm not sure what he was going for. JR as a wrestler, oh yeah, come on. He's a mixture of the Ultimate Warrior, Stone Cold, and a lot of other guys. I believe that's what he said in an interview once, so it makes sense. Following this, The Miz appeared on Battle of the Network Reality Stars and Fear Factor. He also started training to become a wrestler in UPW for a while, and looking at his character, it seems like he'll fit right in the OC. Mike Mizanin's big break would come in October of 2004 when he was a finalist of the $1 million Tough Enough Challenge. He was seen as the reality TV guy, so they didn't really believe that this guy could do much. During the competition, he showed us his passion and love for wrestling. Now, I am going to make a video on this Tough Enough season, but long story short, Mizanin made it to the final where he lost to Daniel Buter. Nonetheless, WWE offered him a developmental contract, he accepted, and he was sent down to Deep South Wrestling and Ohio Valley Wrestling. In OVW in Deep South, The Miz was a loud and obnoxious individual. He was shouting and yelling, "Hoorah!" And just a little side note, he was supposed to be called up with Matt Cappotelli, and they were going to be a tag team known as the Reality Checks. Once Matt was diagnosed with cancer, Kalen Croft, you may or may not know him as the guy with Trent Beretta back in 2010, was going to replace him. Anyways, plans were scrapped and The Miz alone was going to get called up. On the April 7, 2006 episode of SmackDown, a vignette aired promoting The Miz's arrival. He was shown messing around in the WWE headquarters for a couple of weeks, and before the vignettes, this guy, Palmer Cannon, the network executive, warned the audience about Miz's antics and how he's irresponsible and childish. When it was time for The Miz to debut on the April 21st episode, Palmer Cannon crashed the party and he canceled The Miz. Now, these two are going to have a feud, but then JBL and a few others bullied Cannon, and it reached the point where Cannon said, "Screw this." He quit the WWE later that week. Since Miz had nothing else to do, he was made the host of SmackDown about a few weeks later, and he also hosted the Raw Diva Search. The most memorable moment to come out of this was when The Miz botched the phone number or the text numbers or something like that. He didn't memorize the 7 digits, and he tried to salvage this by looking up at the Titantron for info, but there was nothing there, and it was an awkward moment. He had to look on his wrist to give everyone the numbers, and by the end of this, he managed to correct himself. Now, looking at this, it's shocking that The Miz wasn't, axed because of this, because it was a pretty awkward situation. He did speak about how Vince McMahon reacted to this in an interview. And I quote, "I remember being in there with Vince McMahon, and Vince was like, 'We're going to have you kind of like the Ryan Seacrest to WWE.' And I went, 'What? No, I want to be like the big star, like when I was a kid. The Ultimate Warrior was the man. Let me be him, not the host.' But then I was like, well, they'll give me the mic. As long as I have the mic, I know I can get this crowd to either boo me or cheer me. So the first thing that comes out, I have to host this Diva Search where I have to memorize a number, and I wrote the number on my wrist because it was a hard number to remember. It was 7 digits. It wasn't like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, it was like a number. So I totally forgot it. As I was looking on my wrist, you could see me looking on my wrist, and the sweat kind of made it go off. So I totally ruined basically that whole competition. It was bad. So I was completely worried I was going to get fired. I went backstage and I was like, "I am so sorry." And McMahon was like, "Oh, it happens, blah, blah, blah." And to his credit, he kept allowing me to host that show, and as time progressed, I kept getting better and better. One thing that Miz did accomplish during this competition was get himself a girl. I'm not sure though if it was actually in 2006 where he actually went out with Maurice, but this was the beginning of their relationship basically, because this was the first time they met. Anyways, The Miz would finally make his in-ring debut on the September 1st, 2006 episode of SmackDown. His first opponent was Tatanka. JBL was burying him throughout the match, and he absolutely trashed him. He called him the Red Rooster, saying that he also sucked. Miz, though, managed to get the fans to shout hoorah, and despite the tough opponent, The Miz managed to rake Tatanka's eyes and backslide him to win the match. Upon this victory, JBL basically believed that the rapture has arrived. Like, he thought it was the end of the world because The Miz won. Following this match, The Miz beat the likes of Matt Hardy, Funaki, and Tatanka again to go 4-0. He established himself as a heel, and he formed a small partnership with Crystal Marshall before feuding with the Boogeyman. For some reason, the Boogeyman stalked both of them for weeks, and JBL was befuddled as to how the Boogeyman could go through airports looking like that. During this small feud, The Miz suffered his first pinfall loss, and after months and months of trying to avoid it, the Boogeyman finally put worms in his mouth. Once again, JBL was enjoying this. Backstage, though, JBL was hazing The Miz, and back in 2010, he admitted that he did haze the Awesome One. Did I haze The Miz? Hell yes. A lot of people want to talk about me and my hazing. Yes, I did. I make no apologies about it whatsoever. When I started, guys were hazed, and for good reason. They wanted to know that in a riot, which we had a few back in the day, were you going to be on the side of the boys or the fans? Nowadays, there's no room for it. The corporate sterile world that is the WWE. When The Miz came in, most of the hazing was me working, me on the mic, me talking to him. I gave him as much advice as I possibly could because I thought he had the ability to be a good heel. But I'm not going to apologize for hazing him. Also, this is one of the more well-known stories, I have to mention it. John Morrison revealed that The Miz was not only kicked out of the locker room for getting crumbs on a bag, but he was also banned forever. I remember the Miz eating chicken incident. I think he was eating chicken over Scott Armstrong's bag, and Chris Benoit saw him and kicked him out of the locker room forever. Like, completely kicked him out of the locker room. I remember hearing about it, and I was on the other show. Then the Benoit tragedy occurred, and 6 or 8 months after that, Miz had still been changing in the hall. He didn't really know what to do because the rule is whoever kicks you out of the locker room has to be the one to invite you back. So he didn't know what to do. In that case, I think Undertaker might have done this. At one point said something like, "Hey kid, why do you keep changing by the garbage? What are you doing out there?" Then the Miz explained the story and invited him back in. Mike Mizanin himself explained the difficulties of trying to get himself dressed during this time period. So I was kicked out of the locker room for like 6 months, and it was terrible. It was awful. I would find ways like, you know, how Matt Striker got kicked out of the locker room and he would change right in front of people. Me, I said, screw that. No one's gonna know that I'm kicked out of the locker room. I'm gonna hide and find out my own little locker room. My own little personal locker room. The problem is finding a bathroom backstage that isn't a locker room is very, very difficult. I remember one time I had to go out into the audience in order to go to the bathroom, and I'm using the restroom, and there's a little kid going, "I think the Miz is in there." I'm like, this is the lowest of the lows of my career right now. Anyways, The Miz didn't really do much on SmackDown around this time period, and it wasn't until he was drafted to ECW that things changed. He began to be seen with the Extreme Expose, and ECW, it gave him a chance to be taken seriously. Like, had he stayed on SmackDown, I don't think he would have gotten any further than a lower card jobber. On Tuesday nights, The Miz beat the likes of Nunzio. He had an embarrassing moment dancing, and before he knew it, he was paired with the guru of greatness, John Morrison. Now, looking at the pecking order of ECW at this point, I'd say The Miz was number 3 or number 4 behind CM Punk, John Morrison, and Big Daddy V. Like, they were suddenly a tag team overnight, and in their first match as an official team, they captured tag team gold. During their time as a team, they showed off their personalities. I mean, they already showed their characters previously, but this won them over with the audience, especially the fact that they had their own show on WWE.com. The show was called The Dirt Sheet, and it really helped the duo develop their characters. They made fun of everyone, especially Festus, and it was a really entertaining show to watch, full of trolling, sarcasm, and parodies. Anyways, I think we're gonna have to make a separate video about that run, because if I did cover it during this video, then I might screw it up, seeing as it's the entire story of The Miz, and it deserves its own video because the tag team run was pretty fun, and it was filled with amazing moments like the Young Bucks thing, DX, all that stuff. It deserves its own separate video. Anyways, Miz and Morrison held the titles for 8 months before losing them to Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder. They would, however, recapture the World Tag Team titles in December of 2008. They held the gold for 2 months before losing them in a winner-take-all match at WrestleMania 25. At this point, Morrison and Miz's time as a tag team ran its course, and it was time to see if they'll sync or swim as singles competitors. Mostly Miz's time to sink or swim, because John Morrison was basically a bit established at this point. On the April 13, 2009 episode of Raw, The Miz was drafted to the namesake show, which meant that the dirt sheet was no more. The two hugged before The Miz delivered a kick and a reality check to his former tag team partner, showing that he's got the goods. On his time with John Morrison, The Miz explained how it was his last chance to impress management in an interview back in 2013, and I quote, "If Miz and Morrison never happened, I truly believe I would have been fired within a year. I think being with Morrison really gave me the opportunity to take risks. It gave me the opportunity to really stand tall in our realm. When we created a thing called the dirt sheet, which back then, YouTube was just getting going with its popularity, and WWE now have its own YouTube channel. It didn't have its own YouTube channel. It didn't have those internet things. We were the first. So we kind of became originals, and we doing those sorts of things that were going against the grain because we wanted to get noticed. I think Morrison pushed me, and I pushed Morrison to really do the best that we possibly can. We brought the best out of each other, is what I thought." Following the draft, both men continued hosting the Dirt Sheet via satellite. They trashed one another during these episodes, and eventually, the Dirt Sheet stopped airing on WWE.com. Upon Miz's debut on Raw, he was placed in a rivalry with John Cena, if you could even call it that, because this is equivalent to calling out Mayweather and him not showing up. Anyways, on the April 27, 2009 episode of Raw, Miz came out and he bragged about how he has more hits on Google than any one of the fans in the crowd. He said that he's here on Raw to make an impact, and he's here to take on the biggest and baddest of the show, and he's here to challenge John Cena. This was a pretty good promo, by the way. He called for a referee, and he asked for the former champ to come out. Cena chants intensified as Miz stood there impatiently waiting for the former champ. Cena's music played, but he didn't come out. Miz claimed that he ain't man enough to come out here, and he belittled Cena, stating that he can't see him, and Cena's right. Like, you can't see me, because his movies aren't in theaters long enough. He then unleashed a tirade against the main eventer, stating that he's sick and tired of the same people being on top, and now it's time for The Miz to step up and grab the brass ring. He called himself the winner of this match by forfeit, which meant that The Miz won, John Cena 0. He forced Lillian Garcia to announce him as the winner, and she didn't comply with his request. He named himself the winner, and he left. The Miz continued to berate Cena, and he finally got his match 2 weeks later. Now, the match between Miz and Cena didn't end without controversy. Big Show ended up being the X Factor as The Miz managed to win this one, but let me describe it for you. First of all, Cena had some injuries, and so he wasn't 100%. And second, the Big Show was around to distract Cena, and plus, there wasn't a referee in the match, seeing as it was an exhibition match. This self-proclaimed chick magnet claimed that he's 3-0, and following this match, well, he started to aggressively call out Cena. But first of all, Maurice rejected him, and I'll get to that later. Anyways, The Miz decided to wear Cena's merch, and he came out to the Word Life theme song. He made fun of Cena, saying that the only fans he has are teenage girls and prepubescent boys. He claimed that Cena still doesn't want to come out and fight him. He performed a remix of Cena's Word Life theme song as the fans booed him. He called it Nerd Life, and he was garnering a bit of heat from the fans, although they were kids. Like, for example, the dude was 25 before he even touched the booby. He was just messing around. Since Cena didn't respond, it was The Miz 5, John Cena 0. It wasn't until Cena dealt with the Big Show that he gave his attention to The Miz. At this point, though, the Awesome One was 6 or 7-0 against Cena. On the June 22nd, 2009 episode of Raw, John Cena finally responded to The Miz. Here's the promo. I don't want to screw it up. Alright, first of all, The Miz called Cena a coward, and he responded in this way. The good news is, for the very first time, The Miz will main event a pay-per-view this Sunday at the Bash when he has a match with me. It's pretty good, right? The bad news is, this Sunday at the Bash, The Miz has a main event pay-per-view match with me. You see, for 2 months now, you've come out here every day running your mouth saying whatever the hell you wanted to try to get me rattled. You know who you're dealing with? I put my life on the line at Hammerstein Ballroom and came out in one piece. I was booed out of the Hall of Fame. I've had about 50,000 people telling me I can't wrestle on the grandest stage of them all. And I am still here, Jack. I don't get rattled. You want to know what rattle is? Rattle will be when you finally get into that ring on Sunday, you look around and you see all the eyes are on you, and you realize you brought a knife to a gunfight. That's the way I see it. 6 days. 6 more days and then you realize that you don't belong here. 6 more days and you'll find out that the real world has been canceled. 6 more days before you get it in your thick head what everybody knows. You're not a reality show has been. You're a WWE never was. And this right here, this is the part of the show where you put your tail between your legs, you turn around, you go through that curtain, you sit down in that locker room and you pray. You pray to whatever you believe in. That Sunday, you just make it. out in one piece. Now, you might be wondering, why the hell would you mention this promo? Well, it's because in storyline, The Miz didn't know what he was getting into. Like, Cena had to put it in his head. Like, you're going in there with the champ, the guy who won the title 8 times at this point, and you're gonna get your ass kicked. As simple as that. As for the match at the Bash, well, I'll just describe it in 2 words. One-sided. Cena kicked his ass, and to some this was a burial. Like, in 5 minutes, Cena be a 2-time tag team champion on pay-per-view. Now, if it was Raw, yeah, sure, you might say, oh, this is not really a burial, but this could be seen as a burial. But you gotta understand something. A burial is when someone loses a match that they weren't supposed to lose or something like that, and they came out of it looking worse than they previously did. So right now, we're gonna look at what Miz did following the Bash. Cena continued to deliver an ass kicking to him, and this would culminate on the August 3rd episode of Raw. Jeremy Piven, the guest host. Well, first of all, I have to find some time to watch all of these guest host segments because I've got to make a video on that. Anyways, The Miz demanded that Ari Gold book him in a matchup against John Cena. The leader of the C Nation came out and Piven booked the match. If The Miz loses, then he'll be banned from the Summerfest and Raw. As for that lumberjack match, well, The Miz lost, Jeremy Piven hit a crossbody, Dr. Ken suffered an injury, and all in all, it was so damn ridiculous. Since The Miz was banned, he decided to find a way to get back on Raw. He disguised himself as the Calgary Kid, and he beat Eugene in a contract match. Right after the match, the Calgary Kid hit a skull-crushing finale and revealed himself. The fans booed, and this was the first time The Miz wore trunks in WWE. From this day on, that was his in-ring attire, and it worked out for him, because I believe if he continued wearing those shorts, I don't know if he'll be taken seriously, to be honest, but once he wore the damn trunks, he was taken seriously by the audience, by the commentary team, and in general, management backstage. Following this victory, The Miz was given a push. He pursued championship gold, and on the October 5th, 2009 episode of Raw, The Miz captured his first singles title. Now, looking at The Miz in 2009, many saw him as the Jannetty of the group, but he was out to prove everyone wrong by beating his former tag team partner, John Morrison. On the October 16, 2009 episode of Raw, John Morrison and The Miz hosted a special edition of The Dirt Sheet. Personally, I thought this was such an entertaining segment, and I remember watching it back in 2009. Here are some quotes from this segment. Like, it was a pretty fun segment. Miz, wait a minute, you got a championship? Is that thing real, buddy? Or did you get this at WWEshop.com? They delivered verbal blows to one another. Here's another one. At bragging rights, I will prove that I am the Shawn Michaels, and you, my friend, are the Marty Jannetty. Well, that's just impossible, Miz, because Marty Jannetty never had sweet merchandise like I got. Where's your shirt? Another one. But now you are this strange mixture of Michael Phelps, Mr. Red, Pink, and Big Dick Johnson. When you put all this together, you get The Miz. They really disrespected Marty Jannetty. They argued over whether or not The Miz is husky, and personally, I love this quote that Morrison said during the segment. You know, all Raw is these days is a cheap version of Saturday Night Live. So if you want to tune in to watch the amazing star power of Al Sharp and Nancy O'Dell, go ahead. Who's going to host next week? Big Bird? This is must-see TV. If you want to see action and entertainment in the Friday night delight, you tune in to watch Friday Night SmackDown. I think these people here tonight are so sick of hearing the boring Miz be boring on Raw. The Miz. I'll let you know that I am the most entertaining and charismatic superstar in the WWE. I'm the reason people watch Monday Night Raw. I'm the reason people are watching tonight. I carried you for 2 years. I was the talent of the tag team because I'm the Miz and I'm awesome. Morrison responded, no, you're the Miz and all you do is run your mouth. For 2 years, all I've heard was, I got a catchphrase. I'm the Miz and I'm awesome. Be jealous. Shut up. Talk is cheap and this is SmackDown. It's not Raw, and I'm not just gonna sit here and let you talk about everything you're gonna do. So why don't you stand up and actually do something? Come on, husky boy. Why don't you get up and act like a champion? Why don't you get up and prove something? Come on. That's right. What do you want to do? Take a shot at me? I dare you. Miz backed off as Morrison proceeded to call him Jannetty. As for their match, it was good, but as a kid, I was shocked that The Miz won. It felt like he was below Morrison around this time, but with this victory and what happened the following months, he proved that he was actually above Morrison in a way. He beat Morrison's team at Survivor Series, and personally, I think the ball started rolling for The Miz on the January 11, 2010 episode of Raw. This promo is too good for me to butcher. When I first came to World Wrestling Entertainment, not a single person respected me. Not anyone out in the WWE universe, and not anyone in the WWE locker room. Everyone wanted to get rid of me, nobody could stand me, and they made my life a living hell. As a matter of fact, in this very locker room, I got kicked out for eating a piece of chicken over a referee's bag and spilling some crumbs for 6 months. 6 months I was banned from the WWE locker room. I would have to find a place to change, place to shower, place to use the restroom, and I walked down these halls and seen superstars like JBL. And every day that JBL saw me, he would sarcastically say, "Miz, I look forward to your amazing work. Miz, you're a gift from God. Miz." Everybody berated me. Everyone ridiculed me. Everyone wanted me to quit, but all that negativity I used as fuel to ignite a wrath against everyone in the WWE to become the star I am today. Now, I don't even go in that locker room because I have a private dressing room just for me. The locker room is for the Evan Bournes and for the MVPs. Now, a little side note, The Miz debuted I Came to Play on the first Raw of 2010 when he spoke to Maurice in French, and this time, though, it was Maurice who wanted The Miz, not the other way around. Throughout early 2010, The Miz continued gaining momentum and he formed a tag team with The Big Show. They won the Unified Tag Team Championships, which meant The Miz had 3 belts on him, like he was dripping in gold. Initially, they were called Miz Show, but Big Show preferred Show Miz because, you know, showbiz. Now, the most memorable moment for me in Show Miz's run was when the Big Show rode a mechanical bull. He fell off in like 5 seconds and he decided to KO the bull. The mechanical bull taunted the Big Show, and that's why he KO'd. Overall, it was an embarrassing segment for the Big Show, and The Miz called this another guest host activity, ending in severe disappointment, just like the Colts in the Super Bowl, and oh my god, that must have stung. I mean, they booed him for 20 seconds due to that. Meanwhile, a new face emerged in WWE, Daniel Bryan. Unfortunately for him, he was paired with The Miz. On the inaugural episode of NXT, The Miz took a few jabs at his rookie Bryan. He said that Bryan needs to connect with the audience and he should have a good catchphrase. They disagreed with one another right from the beginning, and The Miz slapped some personality into Bryan. Now, Bryan himself wasn't pleased with the fact that he was paired with The Miz, and overall it brought us some entertaining moments on the original NXT. Now, NXT was also where Michael Cole developed some kind of appreciation, some kind of fondness for The Miz. The Miz didn't like the fact that Bryan lost many matches as it was an embarrassment for him, and overall, like I said, entertaining moments. Meanwhile, on Raw, The Miz began a feud with Bret Hart. There was this one promo that once again showed how good Miz was on the mic. Really, Bret? Really? You come back and beat Vince McMahon in a glorified 25-on-1 handicap match, and you're actually proud of that? Well, kudos to you. Congratulations. You're such a hero. Except there's one problem. You're a thief. You coming back and giving your closure has robbed me of my time. My time that I can't get back. For months, I had to hear, Bret screwed Bret. Vince screwed Bret. Bret screwed Vince. And I'm sick of it. Look at me. I'm the United States and Unified Tag Team Champion. I'm the most glorified champion in the WWE. And if anybody deserves to talk about himself, it's not you. It's me. Last night in my very first WrestleMania match, I won. That means I'm 1-0. 17 wins away from tying The Undertaker. Remember SmackDown vs. Raw 2011? Remember that from a loading screen? Don't laugh. I'm awesome. You're another word. Overrated. You know what? Your entire family, including your dad, is overrated. As a matter of fact, you're the most overrated there is, was, and ever will be. Now, why don't you get out of my ring before my fist gives your face closure? Bret responded to this by asking for Miz to make him leave. Big Show got involved, and then all of a sudden the Hart Dynasty came out. This was not only the start of a Hart Dynasty and Show Miz feud, but also the beginning of a Bret Hart and Miz feud. The Hart Dynasty beat Show Miz immediately afterwards by countout, and on the draft episode of Raw, Show Miz was no more. After losing the titles to the Hart Dynasty, the Big Show KO'd the hell out of the Miz. This was probably the longest time the Big Show was a heel. It was about 2 years. Following this, Daniel Bryan was eliminated from NXT, and Chris Jericho formed an alliance with The Miz. Personally, I don't know if you guys remember this. It didn't even last long, but I do remember thinking that these two were going to win some titles, as they previously did. They bonded over their hatred for the Big Show, and they immediately made an impact. The funniest part about this feud with the Harts was when Bret Hart made Miz tap out to the sharpshooter to win the United States Championship. Imagine someone told you that The Miz would drop the title to Bret Hart in October of 2009. What would you think? Anyways, Y2 Miz, or whatever the hell they call themselves, didn't win the titles and they disbanded. The Miz recaptured the US title a month later from R-Truth, and he also qualified for the Money in the Bank ladder match. On NXT, he was mentoring Alex Riley, and he'd eventually become his apprentice. Now, about Money in the Bank, I didn't think Miz was going to retrieve the briefcase. I thought it was going to be Edge, or Orton, or even Y2J's night, but he proved me wrong. Was it the best choice? hell yeah. Orton, Y2J, and Edge were already established performers, and Money in the Bank mostly suits guys who need that push from the mid-card scene to the main event. Obviously, after the match, he bragged about this. He said that since he won the briefcase, it meant that he made it. He said that he's made believers out of critics, and he called himself a future WWE champion as the fans booed. After Money in the Bank, The Miz was asked to be a part of Team WWE by John Cena, and he didn't make his decision until the night of SummerSlam. By then, it was too late, and instead, it was the newly rehired Daniel Bryan who was added to this match. The Miz showed how jealous he is by interfering and nearly costing Team WWE the match by blasting Daniel Bryan with the briefcase. Anyways, a few weeks later, The Miz claimed that he was on the road to awesome. He was on the cover of the October 2010 issue of WWE Magazine, and he called himself the poster child of WWE. Now, once again, this was another standout promo by The Miz. I want you to get up and do what you should have done a long time ago. I want you to admit that you were wrong. All of you were all wrong. Each and every single one of you, I made it, I did it, I'm the poster child. Not Cena, not Orton, nobody besides me. You can't deny it, you can't hide from it. You all watching right now, here and on TV, have no choice but to admit the fact that you were wrong, because I'm The Miz, and I have earned the right to say I'm awesome. Daniel Bryan interrupted, and he challenged Miz to a US title match for a Night of Champions. Miz accepted, and the match was on. As for the title match, I think up to that point, it's my favorite Miz match. He targeted Bryan's shoulder for a bit, and Alex Riley helped Miz gain the advantage. But I will say this though, this is one of the most underrated matches of the past 10 years. I personally never hear anyone talk about this one. I always feel like I'm the only one that really enjoyed it, because it was a pretty good ass match. Anyways, Miz tapped out, which meant that he lost the title. What this meant was, 1, Miz was basically going to become a main eventer real soon, and 2, it was time for The Miz to cash in that bad boy. After floating around in the upper mid-card scene, The Miz on the November 22nd, 2010 episode of Raw finally cashed in the Money in the Bank briefcase. On that night, Randy Orton defended the WWE Championship against the leader of the Nexus, Wade Barrett. Right before the match, the Nexus interfered, and they attacked Orton. During the match, Barrett targeted the leg, and he had the match won, but John Cena interfered, and he FU'd Barrett. Orton then RKO'd him, and he retained the title, but then we hear, awesome, and Orton realized, well, I'm screwed. The Miz went all in and cashed in his briefcase. He targeted the injured leg, but that nearly amounted to nothing as Orton made a comeback and he almost hit the RKO, but Miz countered it into a skull-crushing finale to capture his first WWE Championship. The Miz, after being called a reality star, after being hazed, after fighting his way to the top, The Miz is the champion. Also, look at that girl. Like, she must have been stunned at this wild turn of events. Like, The Miz as champion? Anyways, I freaking love this story. There's a reason why I had to make this video today. Like, I just thought Miz. I haven't made a video on him in a while, and that title reign video, well, I'm going to have to remake because it contains copyright content, and expect it soon. And don't worry, it's not going to be one of those videos. It's going to be bonus content. Like, I'm going to remake all those videos and, like, remove the copyright things from them and all that. Like I said, The Miz really deserved this, and I believe he was the best heel in the company at this point. He was actually really disliked by the audience, and yeah, he deserved it. Sure, his in-ring skills aren't that great, but he manages to entertain outside the ring, and that's what mostly matters. And plus, it's not like his matches absolutely suck. Like, if he's in there with the right opponents, well, he could have amazing matches. And so yeah, expect the Miz title reign video. I'm going to remake it, and like I said, I can't add copyright content to it, unfortunately. I'm going to make it longer and add more stuff to it. And yeah, that's it for this video. Make sure you hit a reality check on the like button and perhaps a skull-crushing finale on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.